How you doing, legends? We're going to have this as the final word podcast and video here, heading into round one. The game starts in 5.5 hours, or even less when you hear this one. And we're going to talk about vice captaincy and captaincy positions there and just how to loop as well. And something that a few of us do need to think about and can be made easier if you do have at least one player in your side that is likely not to be playing. And in my case, it is Jake Doran at this point. For others, it might be bringing in a Will Salzman or something like that, considering that we do think that Constas will be playing right now, and I'll explain how that one works. So, if you are to be vice-captaining Tom Curran, like I am, in that first game, you want to be vice-captaining a Stars player, to then likely, if that doesn't work out, be captaining a Renegades player, given they're the two teams with the double in round one. So, yeah, they're the first two games in a row, but you do have 24 hours or close to that to make that decision on what you're going to do. Let's say Curran comes out with a 60 in game one and a pretty solid score at that, given he's priced at 152, and the Renegades don't have any clear standout captaincy options. So you would be taking that Curran vice captaincy. How you would do that, in my side, for example, is to move Doran to the starting side, and you would put the captaincy on Jake Doran in that situation. The reason you do that is because if Doran doesn't play, which it is likely that he doesn't, especially with Shea Hope coming over as well for round one, if your captaincy doesn't play, you do get double of your vice captain. And then changing Doran over to kick the wicketkeeper slot and moving Seifert over into my emergencies means that I do receive Seifert's score as the emergency for my wicketkeeper Doran, who does not play. That's the very, very simple way of doing things in that, vice captaining in that first game, and just gives you a little bit more flexibility at that. You are able to have 3 emergencies, guys. So if you did happen to, I did also make one change to my side with Webster being locked in for tonight. Well, we'll obviously wait till final team list, but I have changed Buckingham to Richardson, which doesn't leave me with as much cash, but is 73k in the bank to do some moves next week, and we'll muck around with certain things. I think likely I'm going to have to bring a cheaper guy in, whether it is a Jack Wildermuth who is under 60k, whether it's a Renshaw, something like that, will have to come from this side from one of my likely Renegades guys heading into that heading into that second round, just to get me some more cash available to hopefully get up to a match short, for example. So that's potentially how I'm looking at getting up to Shorty if he looks solid, and I really just want him for that double in round 2 instead of sticking with like a Jamie Overton. At worst, I don't get short and I end up grabbing him in round 4 when they have their next double. And I do just focus on gathering some players for other doubles next week in round 2 or in round 3. But you can also, as I said, have someone like a Will Salzman in your starting side if you happen to, I've brought in Richardson. If I really like Richardson's score, I could bring in someone who is a non-player, or it could be a good player. I could trade Thornton out for someone that is just missing this first game and will be back for round 2. You could slot them in. It doesn't have to be a clear non-playing like reserve, like a 39k guy. It can be someone that is playing in this tournament, but they just happen to be not here for the round 1 fixture. That's something to think about as well. So you can do that in the keeper slot, you can do that in the batting slot, and you can do it in the bowling slot. If you do happen to slot 2 emergencies in the one position, what you will receive is the lowest scorer on the emergencies first. And then if you happen to have 2 guys out in your starting team, you will get the second emergency score after that. So the lowest first, and then you will get the highest following that. Okay. Vice captaincies. I do personally think there's probably only 2 guys that you could select. It is Curran, it is Webster. I doubt you could really select too many other guys. Potentially Adam Milne could be your third option if you wanted to select someone a little bit different. But I do think, and Stoinis, they're the sort of third and fourth option, with Stoin, if he is to be named at number 4 and potentially bowling some overs, he could be the guy across the 2 games. But they do have a fairly tough fixture, and we know that Curran and definitely Curran, and then Webster would be your second best option for the vice captaincy. The captaincy, on the other hand, is a much more difficult proposition. Just when you're looking at the Renegades players, a lot of them are really solid without being absolutely spectacular. So if we're just looking at guys in my side, you've got Tim Seifert, who has now got the captaincy since I was mucking around with that position. But yeah, he's definitely an option. I think obviously being the most expensive guy in the Renegades, you have to note him down as one of the better options. But he is a batter / wicketkeeper, which means that yes, there could be some catching and fielding stats, but you're really relying on just his batting and can he score well in both games. Whereas where you can look at someone like a Hassan Khan, who if he's batting at 6 and bowling sort of 2 to 4 overs, I think that's a really nice role and a safer role that you could have as the captaincy. So that's why he's sitting in my side right now as captain, for that reason alone, that he has that really nice all-rounders tag role and has had some recent really good success over in America. Other people you can look at is obviously Seifert's potential opening partner, or he might be batting 3, and then we have Brown and also Fraser McGurk. So those two guys could be that throw at the stumps play and could come out and do really well for you, but have plenty of risks as well. Obviously less fielding stats, but especially Brown has no international experience, whereas Fraser McGurk has a little bit now. He's played in the IPL, so there's a little bit of that there, but the recent form isn't there as such, but we know he can go bang, and so can Josh Brown, coming off some good scores in recent trial games and club cricket, and then also his massive ton in the final series last year, whereas Seifert seems to be a lot more consistent with his scoring. You could expect more 30s off 20s, whereas Browns and Fraser McGurk the 30 off 20 gets you a really nice 55 to 60, some fielding stats there, can do really well. Whereas Brown and Fraser McGurk, they're more likely to go bigger, but they're also likely, to have a low score as well. So those are the two riskier type plays in that top 4, along with Laurie Evans, who I think has some more consistency in his game, but isn't coming into this series with a tremendous amount of form under his belt. But he has lots of good BBL innings and can take it away from teams as well. But if he's batting 4 or 5, that does make it a little bit harder to select him, in my opinion, as your captain, but I still think he's a solid guy to own in your squad. If we do look down to some of the bowlers, so I've got Fergus O'Neill, Zampa, and Rogers in my side. If you wanted a little bit more consistency, then I would suggest a Rogers or an O'Neill. Both those guys are likely to bowl their 4 overs. Rogers has been a guy that's been a previous top tier gun at 170 odd K in the previous 2 years, so he's someone that could definitely do it and is going to get enough balls to get some opportunities to take wickets and get some economy rate bonus. And Fergus O'Neill is in tremendous form as of right now. So let's have a look a little bit further with the Renegades there. If I was to look to trade out Tommy Rogers, so went through the batters there, but the big sort of trump card, I suppose, is that of Will Sutherland. If he's batting below Hassan Khan, is probably not as ideal at batting at 7, but still a solid spot to come out and score some runs, even with that really nice lineup that they've got. But if he's only bowling the couple overs, I find it hard for him to be a captaincy option. But I do see a lot of people, obviously 39%, have him in their side, along with the 49% of Jake Fraser McGurk, which is pretty wild. So Sutherland could definitely be an option. If it looks like he's going to bowl the 4 overs and he's batting at 7, it's still a really, really solid pickup. And then we're looking a little bit lower, and as I said, they're the type of bowlers, Kane Richardson, that you could select for sure, but do they have the upside that you might want from some of these batters in a Seifert, in a Fraser McGurk, in a Josh Brown, or potentially with the all-rounding efforts of like someone like a Hassan Khan, who was only 3% a few days ago, is up to 8% now. And yeah, it's a good percentage from a bunch of these guys, but guys like Fergus O'Neill, I really hope he goes well, because he's only 16% owned, along with guys like Josh Brown, Kane Richardson. It's going to be very, very interesting how that plays out for sure, and Seifert up top with 14%. I do find it very, very difficult to select anyone else as a captaincy option if things don't go well with a Curran or a Webster, a Stoinis, these types of guys. More around the fact that one game, it's very, very hit and miss. Guys like Jamie Overton have the gun role, but can he score enough in one game? If he gets a little bit unlucky and doesn't really get to bat too much and picks up 1 wicket only, he could sit there with a 30 or 40, and that could be a bit rough as your captain, whereas these guys could have one low game but could come out and get 80 in the second. So that's the captaincy and vice captaincy piece. I'm still doing a lot of thinking myself and just like, have I got things right? Have I set myself up in a good position to capitalize on a lot of the doubles in round 1? But obviously set myself up in a position where I can score well in round 2 and then round 3 as well. So what we do need to look at is obviously Perth and Adelaide coming into round 2. And the question here is, who are the guys in this side that can really take the game away from me in round one, right? I am looking obviously to round two and potentially getting a Matt short, but if I can't get up to Matty, do I have enough guys I could trade to some other really good players in Berendorf's, in Finn Allen's, in Andrew Tyres? Does Josh Inglis come in? Like I can move Seifert to an Inglis, for example. There's a few question marks there, and I've only got the one keeper, so if I'm trading Seifert next round, do I have to trade him straight to a keeper, or can I get a cheaper guy in that keeper slot? Do I go to Josh Philippi prepping for round 3? There's a few things to think about for sure, and which one of these guys are going to take a game away from me next week if I don't own them. And there's a few that can do that. Obviously, with Hardy being out right now, he's less of a worry for us, but owning Overton, great. Matt Short can definitely take the game away, and that's where he's on top of mind. Chris Lynn can really dominate, and he picked up a 67 average last year. Berendorf can take a bunch of wickets, and I think that he could do really well against the Stars, and this is a matchup that I look favourably to Perth. So if you do own a couple of Perth players, then that could be really, really cool. I do own currently a Connolly and a Richardson, so those are two guys that I think could do really well. Bat and ball, more bat obviously with Connolly if he bats 3, and then Richardson with the ball could rip through the Stars the Stars batting lineup, just like Berendorf can. We know how good Ty is through the middle, and if Lance Morris is there as well, then he could be very dominant for their side. So they're all guys that could do really, really well. And then you look to some of the players from strikers. You got Ollie Pope coming over very, very shortly, Lloyd Pope as well, and Cameron Boyce, the 2 leggies. Fabian Allen, I don't know if you'll get burnt by him in round 1, but he could be an interesting option for round 2. And if you're starting with a Henry Thornton, that could be cool as well. Do you go a bit cheaper and stash someone away like an Ashton Turner who didn't play well in his 3 games last year, but we know that can do well? And do you just hit and hope that Jordan Buckingham does make that side? And he was sitting there at the moment, but I just don't want to make that assumption that he's going to be there. And if things work out emergency looping wise, then maybe he does come in, expecting him to play at some point. But even guys like Keaton Jennings at the top of the order could come out and do really well. He has a 32 average in T20, so I think people are sleeping on him. And obviously Matt Hurst is going to be the keeper in round 1. Do you pick him? And does Inglis get that chance to come and play for the Perth Scorchers in round 2? There's a lot of questions to answer, and I think it's going to be hard to get it perfect. And there's obviously going to be some people that do pick the right way. I'm trying to cover all bases in the fact that I'm looking to I've got 10 out of my 12 starters from double game teams, and I'm hoping to get a really good start with that, and maybe the players actually have 8 and really set up with some of those really good players that I just spoke about for round 2, and potentially have a Josh Philippi or something like that for round 3, a Paul Walter, a Sean Abbott. There's a bunch of different guys you can start with, and I think it's just opening up our thoughts to all these options. Whether you fade Matt Short entirely, whether you have 100 or so K in your side for him, that could work as well. I'm at 73, which is a little bit low, but it's it's something that I could move around, and if it doesn't work out, I've got a bit of cash to get in some of these good guys that I just mentioned with a boost next week. We'll see how things play out on that front. I could buy a 39.5k guy to earn myself a little bit of extra cash from this starting team for round 2, which could just use as a looper from there, or as a guy like a Buckingham if he becomes available, like Wildermuth, like Renshaw. There's a few guys that are cheap that could do a good job. Maybe I do bring in Salzman from that point in. So there's things that we can do, and I just want personally to cover all bases on that front and make sure that I'm in a good position to capitalize on hopefully some good doubles in round 1, with weather looking pretty good for round 1. There's a little bit of chatter from Andrew Langley, the GOAT of BBL Supercoach, saying that there's potential for rain on that Monica over one, a game with Sydney Thunder against Adelaide, but it did say on their chance of 2 mils of rain, and it does look like it's just a hot 33 degrees, so it might just be a stormy kind of thing, but we'll have to find out how that goes. But it does look like everywhere else is sitting with lovely weather, but that might not be the case for round 2 or round 3. So I think it's good in this scenario to take advantage of good weather and hopefully some good scores across the first couple of games, although I am worried a little bit about the Melbourne Stars with 2 pretty tough fixtures. Perth look like they'll be almost full strength apart from a couple of their batters, but in terms of the bowling lineup coming at them, it's going to be tough for their batters. And then coming up against Brisbane, likely to be without obviously Spencer Johnson and Nisa, but they do have Xavier Bartlett and, they're a couple of gun spinners and Paul Walter there. So there's still really 4 really top line players to go along with a Wildermuth or a Presswitch or something like that. So they're probably the only team I'm worried about in round 1. That's why I've ended up going just with the 4, and McKenzie, Webster, Stoinis, and Curran, who are all really solid players. And we've seen, even McKenzie at 69k do a good job with the bat and the ball. And if he gets an opportunity at 8 or 9, I think he can do some damage for sure. If these, Perth and Brisbane teams happen to get through that top part of the Stars order without a Maxwell in it at the beginning. So just think about all the options that you can do, guys. This is just one way of rolling with it. I'm going to see how Connolly and Richardson go. If they just go solid, then we won't bother with the emergency looping. But if they go gangbusters and pick up a 3 or 4 for, or Connolly gets a 50, then we can look to do some emergency looping. But for the most part, I think these guys are just going to be there for next week, getting me ready and set for a charge into the top rankings in the first few rounds. I wish you all the best of luck when selecting your final teams. I hope that vice captaincy and captaincy chat and just a little bit of strategy chat helped you guys. And I can't wait for tonight. We're getting close and I'm getting excited.